Okay, Melvin, he's got her going now. This is an interview of Robert Cox, and my name's Kenneth Stockley, and Melvin Mitchell is the cameraman this morning. This is the 14th of March, 1987, and we're here in Bob Cox's home in Earlville, talking to him. The Earlville Historical Society is sponsoring this interview, and we're trying to talk to some of the residents of the town who've been around quite a while and see what their recollections are of the days gone by. And Bob sure qualifies for remembering the days gone by, because how old are you now, Bob?
93.
93. You're going to catch Nimmer Khalil if you keep on.
Hmm?
I say you're going to catch Nimmer Khalil. He's about that age too, isn't he?
Oh, yeah.
I think he's around 94. Or
oh, I think he's a little older.
Maybe, yeah. Were you born? You born in Earlville then, Bob?
Yeah.
You born in this right in
out east of town.
East of town?
Yeah.
Now, who were your parents?
John W. Cox and Eddie Currier Cox.
Did you have any brothers and sisters then? Or?
I had two brothers and one sister who died when she was about 11 years old.
Oh, I see. I see. And then you went to school in Earlville, did you?
I went to school for a couple of years. I rode my pony to town, and they had a 2-year ag course out at Ames, Iowa. You didn't have to finish high school.
Oh.
And there were several from around surrounding here that went to school there.
Oh, I see.
And I went out and took that.
Well, that's interesting.
Yeah. And then I came home and went to work in a garage for Frank Dolder. Never farmed.
Well, did you go to high school any here in Earlville, or
2 years?
You went 2 years and then you went out to Ames.
That's right.
Well, you know, I went to school in Ames too.
You did?
That's right.
Well,
that's where I went to.
Well,
I took an ag course out at Ames too.
Well, now this was in 1913 and 14. I remember that. I don't remember dates usually, but this I remember that because of the year that the motorcycles. I rode motorcycle out there.
Oh, you did? Oh, yeah. That was quite a trip.
And
that was they didn't have? Did they have a hard road then?
No.
You were on dirt roads. Went out there?
The macadam and dirt. And macadam was the roughest on a motorcycle.
Could you make it in one day?
Oh yeah.
You made it in one day?
Yeah.
Well, that's a pretty good trip.
Yeah, the last one I came home, I left at 4 o'clock in the morning, and got home before dark.
Did you ever have a wreck with that motorcycle?
Oh, I spilled. Everybody did several times.
You ever break a leg or an arm on it?
Oh no, I never got hurt.
What kind was it? What was the make of it?
The first one was Indian.
Indian. Oh, yeah.
An Indian motorcycle. And the second one was a V-belt driven Merkel, flying Merkel. And that was a wonderful machine.
How many cylinders did that have?
It had an 1.25 leather belt, and I slowed it down. Of course, none of them had transmissions, but a clutch. But you could slow it down. It didn't jerk, you know. It's smooth.
Belt drive.
Quiet. Yeah, an 1.25 leather belt with leather blocks riveted on it.
2-cylinder?
2-cylinder.
2-cylinder, air cooled probably, or was it liquid cooled?
That's right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, they were. The Merkel was a twin. The Indian was a single.
Well, when you came back to Earlville, you didn't farm, but you said you worked for who in a garage?
Yeah, in that old brick building that stood where now Pratt's Hardware is, the Flickinger building.
Oh yes, oh yes.
Yeah,
who ran that garage then?
The shop was on the 2nd floor, and the building was made out of what Ed Graham called those old slush brick,
Mm-hmm.
soft brick.
Mm-hmm.
There are still one or two buildings on Ottawa Street left that I think were made out of the brick.
Oh, is that so?
But anyway, the stone, the foundations, started to cave in, go inward,
Mm-hmm.
and the building was eventually condemned.
Mm-hmm.
And the bricks were hauled out and put on some of the mud roads under for
Moved out.
foundation.
Well, when did you get married then, Bob?
Oh,
Before then, or was after then, I suppose? After you worked in the garage?
it's afterward.
Yeah, yeah. What was your wife's name?
You must
I
have.
owned trucking cars.
Ione
Yeah.
Trucking Guys.
You got married.
Jane, when was we married?
It should have been 1915, Dad.
Huh?
I think 1915.
About 1915?
13?
15.
15, yeah.
15. Well, that's right.
You had several children?
Yeah. Yeah, I had 3 girls and a son.
3 girls and a son.
And I lost my wife and son both in 76.
Oh, yes. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And the girls are Jane and,
Hilma was the oldest.
Hilma?
She lives in Pecatonica.
oh, yeah,
And Roberta lives in Lakeville, Michigan.
Roberta.
Minnesota.
Mm-hmm. You have some grandchildren? You have some grandchildren, or Minnesota? Yeah. You have some grandchildren too?
Lakeville, Minnesota.
Lakeville,
I should have
Minnesota.
said.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Probably got great-grandchildren too, right?
Yeah. Jane had 3 boys, 4 boys,
Mm-hmm.
and one of them has 2. What are my great-grandchildren?
How many great-grandchildren would he have, Jane? You have any idea?
I've got 13 grandchildren.
You have 13.
I have 13. Bill has 2. Bert has 2. So that makes 17.
17 great-grandchildren. That's a pretty good record, Bob. When I came in, I told Bob my name was Stockley, and he said he remembered my my granddad driving a car. What kind in the town? What kind of a car was that?
Winton.
Winton.
W-I-N-T-O-N.
Winton.
They were made in Cleveland, Ohio.
You were always quite a mechanic, weren't you? You interested in cars?
Yeah, been involved with automobiles most of my life.
Mm-hmm.
The last, of course, I worked at the factory out here for the last. I retired in '61.
Oh, from the marathon
And
you
I was
worked?
67 years old then.
Mm-hmm. And then did you work for a car dealer? Any car dealers in town? Or?
Mr. Flickinger, yeah.
Mr. Flickinger?
Yeah.
No.
And I ran a shop, a repair shop for a number of years. And I had a partner by the name of Ezra Kuntz.
Oh, Ezra Kuntz, yeah.
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 Then I went to work at the Ford garage. And I worked for the state for 7 years. The last 2 years, I was the traveling mechanic for the 3rd District, which comprises 10 counties.
Hmm.
And
What kind of vehicle? What make of?
I drove a Chevrolet panel truck with supplies. I bought my own supplies.
Oh.
And I traveled and had truck inspections all over the 10 counties.
Oh,
And
that was quite a job.
I got tired of it. And when the hemp mill started up here,
Oh yeah.
I quit and went to work in the hemp mill.
What did that hemp mill was during World War II, wasn't it? They built that out here south of town on McGarry's farm.
I was one of the so-called master mechanics.
Now that was to process, the farmers would raise this hemp out on the farms. During the war, they couldn't get hemp from the Philippines, from overseas to make rope. So did they make rope out here actually, or what did they do?
The Japanese had all the hemp.
Mm-hmm.
And it had been raised in this country, up in Wisconsin, and there's one mill I know was near Kenosha because there was a fellow came down here from Kenosha to help.
Mm-hmm.
And
did they make any rope here?
no.
Didn't make rope?
No, it was all baled in heavy bales and shipped out.
Mm-hmm.
And the last batch of tow, which is the short stuff, was stored in the car barn down in Ottawa and eventually sold to Belgium.
Oh.
Of course, the tow they could make rugs and stuff out of, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But for cloth, boy, it had to have length to it.
It wasn't long enough fiber.
Yeah,
it
right.
wasn't long enough fiber. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Well, you had quite a lot of experience. You've got a picture here you showed me. I don't know if you can get a shot of this, a close-up of this, Melvin. This is a picture of an old car. Can you zero in on that and see what Bob said it was a picture of Jack Robinson, John W. Robinson,
Yeah.
in front of his drugstore. And this must be quite a few years ago. What kind of car was that, Bob?
A Stoddard Dayton.
Stoddard Dayton.
Yeah.
Is that kind of a pretty fancy car for those days?
Well, the first automobile shows in Chicago had over 100 makes of American cars. Now there are 4 and probably soon be 3.
Mm-hmm.
Cars were made in Streeter, Ottawa, Galesburg, Peoria. Most every town of any size had a
car.
car manufacturer.
Yeah. Wonder where would this one been made then? This Stoddard Dayton?
That was made in Toledo, Ohio.
Toledo. Oh. Well,
I think.
Jack, I remember Jack Robinson. My family lived on a farm he owned out north of town there a number of years. And we used to come in to see Jack in his drugstore. And at the time I remember him, he had a Cadillac, I believe. One of the older Cadillacs.
Yeah, well, at one time there were 3 drugstores in Earlville.
Oh, there were?
Yeah, during Prohibition.
Oh, you remember Prohibition, do you?
Oh, yeah.
Oh, yeah?
There were originally the old plank sidewalks with there were businesses downstairs, upstairs. There were 2 hardware stores.
Oh.
There usually were at least 4 or 5 grocery stores, a couple of clothing stores. There was 2 harness shops.
2 harness shops?
Yeah. There was 3 grain elevators.
Oh.
The first elevator in town, which I do not remember, but only from being told about it, was not an elevator really at all. It was a long ramp that the team pulled the wagons up on top of and dumped into the cars.
Oh.
And it stood where later the freight house was.
Oh, they'd load the railroad cars
west
that way.
of the business district.
They'd load the railroad cars that way?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And the railroad was quite a business those days.
Everything came by rail, I suppose.
Everything came by rail. You could take 4 passenger trains at different times to Chicago and back. And there was an old wooden water tower west of where the depot is now.
The trains would get the water out of that.
There was a steam pump down by the creek that pumped the water into it. later there was a steel tower near the creek.
Well,
Do you remember, I was thinking about the famous brass cannon that I used to hear throw out on the farm every 4th of July morning.
no, I don't
You may
remember.
have heard about it.
I heard a little story about it, I think, but you better
Yeah.
tell it. You tell it.
Well, it was a Civil War cannon, and they had shot it so many times that they was afraid it might burst and hurt somebody. And Floyd Foote, an old resident who lived across the track, told me that they dumped it in a well back of Dupee's store.
Oh.
There were a lot, several old dug wells that were dug before the waterworks. And then a few years later came a letter from Jack Dupee, who said that his uncles put it in the delivery wagon and dumped it off the railroad bridge in the creek.
In the creek out east of town?
Now Jack has to be misinformed
Oh.
because there was a wagon bridge right north of the railroad bridge. All they had to do, if it is in the creek, all they had to do was drive onto the wagon bridge and dump it off. They never carried that cannon up to the top of the railroad bridge.
I see. I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, I had heard, someone else told me that cannon it had to be in Indian Creek out east of town. They had heard it was dumped out there.
Yeah, that's
but no one's ever found it.
That's a general story.
No one ever found it.
But I still
I
think
don't think it's true.
it's dumped in a while back the store.
It may be.
Yeah.
Did they fire it every 4th of July then?
Oh yeah, sunup.
Sun up on the 4th of July. It was brass, you say?
Yeah.
Brass cannon.
There were, brass cannon. There were 3 grain elevators. Most of the time there was 4 or 5 blacksmith shops and horse showing establishments. There were 2 livery stables. There were 3 hotels.
3 hotels.
The one in the Waldorf building is still standing next to the bank there. And the Wallace House on the corner, which he now calls the Heartbreak Hotel.
Oh, that was the Wallace House.
And the National Hotel, which stood across the street east of the lumber yard, where last was Howie's implement business.
Yes, yes.
And I worked for, interesting thing, I worked for one winter for Remick, and the oven was down in the basement.
Well, Remick, that's where Remick did their baking
And they put
in that building. Yeah.
they put the wood fire in the oven in the daytime, pulled the fire out and baked the bread at night.
Oh.
As many as 1,800 loaves,
Oh.
which was wrapped in brown paper and a string tied around it, and sold for 5 cents or 6 for a quarter.
Hello. Well,
That's the truth.
where did all that bread go? Did they sell it around town, or?
The sidewalk was always full of bread baskets, bread boxes, and they shipped to surrounding towns.
Oh, shipped it out to other towns.
Yeah,
Well, that was quite a business.
yeah.
Yeah.
And there was also usually another bakery on Ottawa Street. There were there were a lot of businesses.
I was going.
Two harness shops.
I was going to ask you about the bandstand. You know anything about the bandstand?
Yeah.
When was that made, or do you remember when it was made?
No, I don't. I wouldn't attempt to give you the date, but it was much later.
It was later.
Yeah.
The library, that was later, I suppose.
There were, there were libraries built first. There were 7 churches.
Oh, there were.
in town.
7 churches.
Yeah, there was 2 on the north side, in addition to the locations that are there now.
There's no churches on the north side
There
now.
was one block west on the corner, the Congregational Church, and there was another one a block east, where Masterson lives. It was a Baptist church. That was a brick church. The other one was wooden.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, and they were
Then I suppose the Presbyterian was down there,
the same place.
and the Methodist, and the Catholic, and the Lutheran.
They're original. The Universal Church was where Bob Harris lives now. And it was a brick church, a beautiful church with 2 spires. Yeah.
Right across from where Doc Fisher's office is in there.
And there were also 6 saloons.
Oh, well, can't forget them.
Which paid $1,000 license a year apiece.
Oh.
And the greatest 4th of July celebrations you ever could imagine.
What'd they do?
It was a racetrack on the northwest corner of town.
I've heard of it, yeah.
Yeah. And they used to have horse races, and they would put the horse races on first, and they'd chew the track all up, and then us motorcycle racers had to...
You had to race after the horses, huh?
Yeah. Earlville had 2 ball teams, the town team and Charlie Wilson's Rangers.
Mm-hmm.
I could name most of the players, but it would take
Well, name a few of them.
take too long.
Go ahead and name a few of them if you can.
Yeah. Yes, there's quite a business.
I'm sure the 4th of July was a big day in the
Big
town.
day, parade,
Oh, they had a parade, huh?
fireworks at night like you never see now.
Did they have dances and stuff then in those days, or?
There was every 4th of July there was a big balloon, which a fire was built and a tunnel to it, and it took all day. The 4th of July, it made of silk, a big balloon.
Oh, they'd fill the balloon up with hot air.
It'd take all day to fill it up, and it would go up about 5 o'clock
Oh,
at night.
that was quite a celebration. Was there a man in it too then? Or?
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Well, how'd he get down?
Oh, they had to go. I don't know. They had telephones then, I think, but they had to locate him and go after him.
The balloon had come down, and wherever he landed, why,
Yeah.
Well, that's pretty interesting. You mentioned Prohibition. What did those saloons do during Prohibition?
No saloons, but there were 3 drugstores.
Well, they had to go to the drugstore to buy their medicine.
Well, I suspect that one of them.
Oh, one of them might have had a little under-the-counter business or something.
Yeah, I expect.
That Prohibition must have been quite a time.
Yeah.
Did you ever have? Did you have a car then? What was your first car? You remember your first car?
First car I had, I think, was an EMF when I was in the repair business.
EMF.
Yeah, that was a Studebaker. Frank Dolder sold Studebaker cars. I worked for him for several years, and they were a really good car, very reliable. There was some years that he couldn't get enough of them, and he sold some Michigan cars and some Oakland.
Oakland.
Yeah, I went to Chicago and drove a number of them out.
Oh, you drive them out from Chicago?
Yeah.
That's the way they get them out here, huh?
Yeah.
Huh. Well, that's interesting.
Yeah.
You've had quite a career with mechanical
Yeah.
devices.
Yeah. I never done anything else much, really.
You mentioned Ezra Kuntz, it was a partner of yours?
That's right.
Well, I remember Roy Kuntz. Now, was Roy a son of his then?
Roy's brother.
Roy's a brother of his?
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Ezra was the oldest.
I remember Roy working for John Woods many years over there in the International.
That's right.
Yeah, Roy.
That's right. That building, that Wiley building, they called it, where the implement business was, west of Dave Large's blacksmith shop was on the corner. And I remember on one of the first airplanes was shipped, they were shipped here, knocked down and shipped by express and put together.
Oh, yeah?
And one of them had up at the racetrack, it had a rotary motor, and something went wrong and it came down and broke the wings.
Oh?
And Jimmy Reese, who was an expert wagon maker, woodworker, repaired the wings before they shipped it away.
Repaired it so it could fly again, huh?
He worked for Dave Large.
Was that the first airplane you saw around town?
I believe it was, yeah. I believe it was.
That must have been in the 1910 or 12 or 13,
Yeah.
Somewhere in there.
Right, you know, maybe before that.
Maybe before that.
Now that hotel, the original Wallace House was built by a second cousin of mine from Sandwich
Oh.
by the name of Albert Wallace. And I remember well the night that the original one burned.
Oh.
And I must have been 10 or 12 years old. And recently it was estimated that, in the paper, it was estimated that it was over 100 years old. Well, it's not.
It wouldn't be that old.
No, because I seen the original one burn when I was a boy. And they had a steam pump at the waterworks, which pumped direct into the mains in case of fire. And the fire department had a hook and ladder and hose carts, which were all pulled and pushed by hand. And they burst the main. An awful cold morning. It burst the main east of where the laundry is now.
Couldn't get water then.
Yeah, I remember it was terrible cold, and the walls were all down when we got to town. My brother brought me to town.
Then they rebuilt where the present Heartbreak Hotel is.
So yeah,
right there.
So it was rebuilt then, but it can't be that. This one can't be nowhere near 100 years old. I'd estimate it might be 80, in the 80s.
I'd take your estimate. I think that's a pretty good estimate.
Yeah.
I've been told you did some woodworking, or liked woodworking as kind of a hobby.
Well, after I quit, I made most of all this stuff.
Oh, did you? The furniture here in the room?
I made about 14 of those clocks.
Oh, yeah, it's a beautiful clock back there. I noticed that when we come in.
I also made about 3 dozen of them that hang on the wall.
Oh.
And a bunch of little quartz clocks later.
What kind of wood do you like to work with?
Most of walnut, if I could get it.
Walnut.
That there desk was the old oak dining room table with all the leaves in. You remember?
Yes, yes.
Yeah.
You made that desk out of an old dining room table.
That's right. This thing here that the telephone is on.
Telephone stand, yeah.
That's what most antique people seems to take their eye.
You made that too?
Oh yeah. I made this in stereo. I put together the receiver, and
you have a lathe then. I suppose you used a lathe to turn the legs and the.
Yeah.
pedestals?
Yeah, I'd like to show you the shop if you care to look at it.
Sure, we'll
Have
look
lots
at it
of-
before we go.
But I haven't done anything for the last, practically nothing in the last couple of years.
Mhm.
But my grandsons, they come in and use the shop once in a while.
Keep the tools polished up, huh?
Yeah,
Yeah.
and
Well, it's nice to talk to you, Bob. We appreciate your sharing some of your memories with us.
well, I'm glad to do it. I remember things that happened when I was young,
You remember the Depression?
and something that happened yesterday I forget.
You forget that.
Yeah, I'm getting. What did you say?
Do you remember the Depression
Oh
time?
yeah.
When things were pretty tough?
Oh boy, they sure were tough. And I often think that, but
The banks were closed. And,
my daughters tell me that we always had enough to eat anyway.
well, that was the main thing. Did you have a garden?
Oh yeah,
You had a garden?
yeah. Last year I probably wouldn't have had if Jane hadn't helped me with it and put it in, but I'm getting so I fell and hurt my back on the ice last year.
Oh.
Winter.
Oh.
And since that, I was sort of half dizzy. I lost my equilibrium or something. But I'm thankful to be